Hello. Thank you for joining us for Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. Our guest is Michael Wood. He's the Chief Operating Officer for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. He'll be sharing his own story, parenting after surviving a traumatic childhood, and the importance of controlling the narrative, the experience of doing that. Dawn will share her experience as well. Michael will also talk about the work that he's doing with NAMI and give us a little bit more insight into some of the support they offer folks. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my website. Dawn, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Neil. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's we use this time in the beginning of the show to check in a little bit, to kind of share what's going on. We'll also tee up the episode as well. But I do want to give one quick update that is not related to this episode or the topic we're going to talk about. But I wanted to just share that I was going through a bunch of old papers yesterday. My mom had given me a bag some time back, and I found some old report cards. This is going back to 3rd and 4th grade. Now, for folks who are regular watchers of the show, you'll know I've shared the fact that I was diagnosed with ADHD last year. About October is when I got the diagnosis. I shared it this spring. But reading the evaluations that my teachers gave me in 3rd and 4th grade, they literally could have come out of an ADHD textbook. They were like I was reading them with Pam and like that could have been in the book, right? And my therapist, when I told her today, she was like, "Yeah, that's like from DSM-4. That's like copy and paste." And so I was a little thrown for a loop by that. I'll admit. It's like, really? I've been dealing with this for that long.
Yeah, that had to be something else. Hey,
it's a little bit shocking. It's a little bit shocking. I know that you have been spending some time at the ballpark recently. I do want to note that I took off my Yankee shirt for the show because I didn't want to provoke you too much.
Yeah. It's I mean, what can you say? Like, Brewers are just on fire. We went to the game yesterday. It was just, it was like magic. It was just electric. The crowd was electric. The team is just, they are playing baseball the way baseball's intended to be played. It's just, you can't write a better script for them. They're just on fire. So
that's
very
great.
Very fun to be a Brewers fan right now.
That's great. So for folks who may be watching us for the first time, thank you and welcome. This show, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health, is live streamed twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of every month. Dawn and I started this show last February. It was about a year and a half ago now, with the idea of lowering the stigma around mental health. It's something that both of us have had our own challenges with. I've primarily talked about anxiety and depression, and now it's actually ADHD that's caused anxiety and depression. I'll always say that Dawn is my inspiration for being forthright on social media, always sharing, being very transparent about how you're doing and what you're dealing with. But our goal was, if we can talk about these issues in our sphere of influence, people that follow us, our friends, our guests' friends, etc., it might just make it a little bit easier for folks who are struggling with some of these same issues. We've had a number of people talk about bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. We've had advocates, we've had therapists on, we've had people talk about, coaches on to help us, think about mindfulness and that type of thing. I'll say that the thing, Dawn, that gives me the most pride about the show, most feel the best about, that we've had several people come on the show and share their experience with their struggles with mental health for the first time ever. That's not people who aren't public about it, who aren't speakers or that type of thing. So that always feels really good. Let's go ahead and say hi to a couple folks watching. Jonathan is watching from the East Village in New York. Jonathan, always great to see you. If you are watching on various platforms, let us know where you're watching from. Type in the comments in the chat where you're watching from, and we can put it on the screen. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure to press play on the video. Sudha Parekh is watching from Hastings-on-Hudson. You might recognize the last name. My mom. Thanks for watching, Mom, always. Appreciate your support. And you've got your support as well, Dawn. We've got someone saying hello from the home of the Brew Crew. That's Jim Neuburg, your husband, who I also think very highly of and really think he's great. My sister, Amy Parekh Mehta, is watching from Bellevue, Washington on Facebook. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate you logging in. Stephen Kaplan, a former guest on the show, is watching from Ramsey, New Jersey. So thank you, Stephen. And Patricia Kitchen is watching from, I know she's offering greetings from New York. Kate is watching from Milwaukee. Kate actually happens to be
downstairs.
On your side, right? Downstairs. A close friend happens to be your landlady. We have Kathy Young watching from Glasgow, West Virginia. So, Kathy, thank you for joining us. I'm going to go out on a limb because of the West Virginia connection that you may know Mike Wood. We'll ask Mike about it when he comes on, but thank you. We have Daniela Carmona watching from Los Angeles. Daniela, thank you, watching on LinkedIn. And Kristen Castleberry watching from Troy, Illinois. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely, and Kathy says Mike is her cousin. So thank you, Kathy. And we'll give Mike a chance to give a proper hello once we bring him on. But that's what we'll do throughout the show is we'll put on some of these comments. If you put comments in the chat where you're watching, we'll be able to show them on screen. As far as the topic is concerned for this week, I have to say this is when we talked about it, Dawn, it really struck a nerve, I think, for both of us. This idea of taking the experience that you've had as children, traumatic experiences. First of all, how you deal with that and kind of what those experiences are, but then how does that impact your parenting and what choices do you make? How do you adjust after that? And I know that both you and Mike have had some very significant experiences that you'll share. But one of the interesting things is that you also both talked about how at an early age you learn to control the narrative. You learn to kind of really make sure that people had saw what you wanted them to see about your home life and your family life. So we'll talk about that as well. And as I mentioned, Mike will also talk a little bit about NAMI before this show is over. Quick housekeeping. I want to make sure that we give a shout out to Digimentors. Digimentors is the production company, consulting firm that I work for, but they give us support to produce this show, which I really appreciate. The time, the space, the tools. Digimentors does digital marketing, events, and digital programs like this, trainings and workshops. Several of the folks who checked in to say hello, notably Stefan Kaplan and Patricia, are Digimentors colleagues. So thank you for the support that you give us there. So as far as this episode is concerned, let's start off with the blog post that Mike wrote. The headline, and this is, I want to just kind of make it clear for folks. This is actually an article that he wrote for NAMI, for a newsletter that they allowed us to reprint on our website with the headline, "Working for the National Alliance on Mental Illness is Personal." And the quote with the brackets, "I dealt with the trauma at home," and he's referring to his mom's bipolar disorder, his dad's substance abuse and violence, "by hiding it away. No one should suffer from a lack of good care like those in my family did." So there's a lot in that quote. There's a lot more in the post, but we'll bring on Michael Wood to talk a little bit more about this. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me. Hey, Don, how are you?
Good. So glad to have you on our show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And I should add in the introduction, I failed to mention that I actually first met Mike a number of years ago. I think we figured it out that it was probably 2012 when I was working in Everett, Washington at the United Way of Snohomish County. And Mike came out on a visit with our then U.S. President, Stacey Stewart. We didn't actually overlap at United Way Worldwide. I think I joined after you had left.
Yeah, it feels like we did, but we didn't. Yeah.
But we've known each other since then. And Mike, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Let's get right to it. You have written about your experience growing up. You actually wrote a piece on Medium, a longer piece, before you joined NAMI. And then you saw the opportunity to join NAMI and you joined them. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up? What were some of the challenges that you had to deal with when you were a kid?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would start by saying that in so many ways, my childhood was, like other people's. I grew up in a working class family. My mom had worked for the telephone company where she met my dad. I come from 3 generations of telephone company workers. My mom's father, my maternal grandfather, also worked at the phone company, and so dad was working for him, and they met there. Mom ended up ultimately being a stay-at-home mom most of my childhood, and my dad was he was a phone company man. He worked there for 50 years, started as the janitor, and was the director of operations for all of West Virginia for Verizon when he retired. So in many ways, it was a typical, childhood in a working class family, but there were a lot of struggles. I grew up in southern West Virginia. It's well documented that it was ground zero for the opioid challenge, for drug addiction, a lot of challenges in that part of the country. And my family wasn't, immune to that. My dad, his father abandoned him as a baby. He had a stepfather and a half brother, but he wasn't really accepted as a son. And so he was passed around the family a lot growing up. And that really affected him. And like a lot of men back then, stigma was a big issue, still is, around mental health. So his way of dealing with it was to drink. And he was a functional alcoholic. It never affected his career. But especially in those early days, when he would come home, he would drink, and it was like Jekyll and Hyde. He would turn immediately, and get angry, and mostly took it out on my mom, verbally, physically, a lot of physical violence. Sometimes he took it out on us. And it was rough. I have a lot of early memories of some really bad things. Dad, picking me up by the shirt collar and pushing me against the wall and telling me I was worthless. Smacking my mom around, throwing food, just really, saying he was going to kill her. There was one time I remember when I was probably 3 or 4, and he had guns, and he was playing with one and drinking, and mom was really scared for us. And I remember she gathered my 3 brothers and I up and snuck us out of the house, and took us over to a neighbor. So all these things were happening. And on top of that, mom struggled. She, she always had issues with substance abuse. It got worse over the years, but on top of that, she had bipolar disorder. It wasn't diagnosed for years. And she never really got good treatment for it. And it caused all kinds of challenges. So you can imagine my dad drinking, violence, that made mom's situation worse. She had so many kids with dad that she gave up her career. She was a very independent. She was like a rock and roll mom. She was cool. She was independent. She had to give all that up. And I know that she suffered because of that. And so childhood was hard. I don't remember a lot of hugs or any really, or being rocked or like read. I would have to go to my grandma's for those things. And because mom was just totally stressed out. She had the 4 kids, all really close in age, and not a ton of support. And she had a husband who, it was, they were like oil and water. They loved each other and they stayed together, until the end. But they were constantly having challenges. And my, the way I dealt with that was, and my brothers, we all dealt with it differently, which is really interesting. But my way of dealing with it was that I hid it. And so I would go to school, mom and dad would be fighting, and, I might be in tears, and I would, wipe the tears away and go into school and make sure that nobody knew. School was an oasis for me. I was a good student, was a teacher's pet, in school. And that was an escape for me. It was almost like going to school the way I handled school was a trauma response. I would have lived there 24/7 if I could have done that. So that was, I would hide that away. I never, in my entire childhood, never once had anyone over for a sleepover. I would never do that. Never had people come over to hang out because I was terrified that someone would see, because I would go to their houses and see how things were. And it was like very different than what I was experiencing at home. And I just thought, I don't want anybody to see this. I was just aware at a really early age that it wasn't the same as everybody else. So I kept everyone away from that. And I mean, maybe some people knew, but I suspect that most probably didn't, because I didn't fit the bill. My brothers did well in school. We were good kids. And, my constant fear, thinking about it and looking back, my constant fear was, if somebody finds out at school or somewhere else, they're going to do something and we're going to get taken away, or, something like that. And so I wanted it all to be hidden. And so, I learned at an early age to sort of control the environment around me. As you were talking about that earlier. I also learned to put really stressful things sort of in a mental box and set them aside. So in some ways, this was just, I could avoid it, because I could go through all this traumatic stuff and then, go to school and make straight A's and, get awards and, things like that. And so, it had a profound impact. And mom and dad, they struggled. They loved each other. I never thought I wasn't loved. There were lots of, in between all of that, there were good times. I love both of them. I miss them, dearly. But, it was rough. It got worse. I remember getting a full ride scholarship to WVU, and there were only 5 people that got the scholarship, and they had a press conference at the governor's mansion. And I remember going with my mom and my grandma. My mom, being on drugs, and she could barely function. She was pilfering through her purse, and she was having all these struggles. My grandma was trying to calm her down, and I was sitting there almost having a panic attack. In what was supposed to be a big special fun moment for me, and so and it wasn't her fault. I mean, she struggled with these things, and she wasn't treated. At the time I was just embarrassed. I mean, I understand it now. So it was rough. They struggled for years. I left home, obviously, went to college, got married, had a son. Things got worse for the 2 of them. It all sort of culminated in mom having an accidental overdose. She was, interestingly, I said she was a rock and roll mom. She was planning to go to an Alice Cooper concert at the West Virginia State Fair with one of her best friends. And we thought, my dad, they were on the outs at the time. He wasn't staying there. And she thought that, or we thought that she had gone to the concert. We couldn't get a hold of her. We thought, well, she had gone, with her friend, and we couldn't see her, or she couldn't get a cell signal where she was. But after a couple of days of not hearing from her, my brothers and I started to get really nervous. And my youngest brother lived close by, so we sent him over to check on her. And he found her on the couch, and she had died. And it still bothers me to this day. She died like that, and she died alone. And that impacted my oldest brother. It impacted all of us, but it impacted my oldest brother the most. He also had substance abuse challenges, and they got much, much worse after that. And 13 months after that, it was 13 or 15 months, somewhere in that time range after that, he also died from an accidental overdose. So it was tough. It was tough.
I'm showing a picture of your mom,
Yeah.
later in life. This is when she was in Amsterdam. I don't know how late was this picture?
Yeah,
in that timeline.
A few years before she passed away. So, one of the things that I was really happy about was that sort of in her last years, Mom started to become more independent. Like a lot of people who were in abusive relationships, she in a lot of ways became a shell of herself, but that really started to change in the last few years. Sure. And she got more independence, and she met a person online, actually, a friend of hers, Marlene, who lived in Amsterdam, and they both had German Shepherds. And so they bonded over that. And one day Mom just, she told my dad that she was going to Amsterdam and he was going to pay for it, and she was going. And, he decided to do it, which was unusual for him, but he gave her the money. And she'd never been anywhere. My mom just wasn't a traveler, definitely not an international traveler. And she went and took this trip. And I remember when she left, I looked at Dad and said, there's a good chance we're never going to see her again, right? Like, I thought, she was going to have so much fun. And her friend took this picture when she got off the train in Amsterdam. And I've always just loved it. I just thought, like, I could just see how excited she was and how proud she was that she had done all this by herself. She actually went back a second time, which I thought was really cool. And anyway, it was just, she's got the black hair and the sunglasses. I mean, that was my mom. She was rock and roll all the way. I just, I feel bad for the people that didn't get to know her.
And Kristen, shared a comment earlier when you were talking about, when she had that accidental overdose. That wow, that's tough. Kristen, thank you so much for watching on LinkedIn. Kristen is a family advocate from Troy, Illinois, and I'm assuming that she is heard about the show through NAMI and through I don't know if she's a connection of yours, but Kristen, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate that. Before I bring in Dawn to kind of share some of her background, which there are a lot of parallels to actually, I do want to ask you about the this card that your mom left you that you found recently. And kind of what that means to you, and then we'll bring in Dawn's story, and then we'll compare notes in terms of how you've approached parenting with these backgrounds that you both have. But tell us about this card. Yeah.
So when you're young, your parents give you things, and you sort of roll your eyes, right? Like, and Mom gave me this card when I graduated college, and I at least had the presence of mind to stick it in a box somewhere. But shortly after she died, I was going through things and I found it, and it, it took on a whole different meaning. So, it talks about a firefly and sort of a firefly being stuck in a jar, but when it was released, it took its place in the stars. And she wrote in it, "Dear Mike, this card has no money, but it has so much love in it. You were a firefly just as all your brothers were and are. Letting you go free has been the hardest thing I've ever done. but it's also the best thing I've ever done. As sad as it's been, my heart swells with pride, and it says, "Don't be afraid to shine. I love you, Mom." And it, it's even hard to read it now, but that was my mom. My mom, she never. One of the things I loved about her was that anytime anyone bragged about any of us, the thing that she would immediately say afterwards was, "I'm proud of all my sons." So like somebody would come and say, "Mike, we're really proud of Mike. He got this scholarship." Well, she would say, "Me too. I'm proud of all my sons." We were all different, but she made it clear always that she loved us all equally. And and she never, because my dad, I think growing up with no money, it affected him, and he was always sort of tight with his own money, which also caused issues in our family. So most of the time, Mom didn't have two nickels to rub together, but she was always, she would go out and get you a card, or she would go to the dollar store and get you a gift. She was just that kind of. We always said that if she won the lottery, we knew that she would give all of it away. I mean, that's just kind of person that she was. And so that part's just a reminder to me of, anytime that, I'm going through life and I'm struggling, or I have self-doubt, I just channel my mom. We always say WWMD, what would Mary do? And this card's just a reminder. And it's funny that you brought it up, because I had literally just looked at it before I got on here. I was thinking about her, and just hoping that she knows that I talk about these things because I want people, I want her life to matter. I mean, mattered to me, and it mattered to my family. But I want, I want good things to come out of what was a terrible situation, and I hope she's proud.
I'm sure she is, Mike. I'm sure she is. Two quick comments, actually. Sudha Parekh, my mom, who is watching, says that in spite of all the problems, you managed well, and she's sure it must have been very difficult. My sister also is weighing in. I'm so sorry that your father took out his anger on you. I'm amazed that you managed to put on a strong face and go to school after all that. You talked about whatever you were dealing with in the morning, having to just mask that and hide that and present a kind of a calm face for the rest of the world. Certainly challenging.
Yeah, well, it was.
Kathy, who knew her, says she was a good mom and she loved you very much. And that's
I'm really blessed that at least on my mom's side, I have a huge family. My grandfather had 5 brothers and sisters. My grandmother had 15. And so I have an enormous extended family. Kathy was our neighbor when in my early years, when we actually lived in Glasgow, where she lived. And she's my cousin, but she in most ways she's more like a bonus mom. I have several cousins like that, and I'm really lucky. And she and Mom were really close. They're close in age, and they grew up together. And so
that's great.
Hi, Kathy.
Let's go ahead and bring in Dawn's blog post. As I said, there are some parallels, and we'll kind of tee up that discussion around parenting. And really, Dawn, the title of your blog post, "Shielding My Kids from Heartache Wasn't the Best Parenting Choice." I don't have a ton of happy childhood memories, but I always knew that I was loved. When I had kids, I knew I wanted their lives to be different than mine was growing up. I know now, however, that I completely overcompensated. Dawn, can you, before we get into the parenting side, can you give us a little bit of that background? Share what it was like for you to grow up. I know with your blog post, you actually started with the line about your father, which I thought was very meaningful. Coming out with the very first line of the blog post. Growing up, I had to take care of myself a lot. My dad was an alcoholic, and my house was often very chaotic. I never wanted to have friends over because of this secret we kept in our family. I spent a lot of time at other kids' houses, realizing that things in my house were not normal.
Yeah. There's a lot of similarities to what Mike has to say. My dad was not abusive in that same like physical way. But he was just, he was a fall down on your face kind of drunk. Like he would get drunk until he couldn't stand anymore. And that was really very difficult for me as a kid. And my brother kind of just ignored it. And I was just like this empathetic helper kid who just wanted to have everything be okay in my house. And Mike, when you were talking about, not wanting anybody to find out because you didn't want anything bad to happen to your family. It was a very similar thing for me. Like I knew that my parents loved us. And I didn't want that to be disrupted, because when there wasn't alcohol happening, things were okay enough.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so I didn't want there to be any disruption in our lives. So being very quiet about it and not letting anybody know what was happening inside my house was really a coping mechanism for me. The difference between Mike and I is that I was not a good student, and it did affect how I performed in school. I was a big crier. I cried a lot, and that was a really difficult thing as an elementary school kid. I got teased a lot, and it was like Dawn's a big crybaby, and so school and I didn't really gel in the same way. I actually ended up getting my master's degree because I wanted to prove that I was smart enough to be able to do that. And I'm very proud of that aspect of my life, getting my master's degree. But my house was really chaotic and scary because of how bumbly my dad was, and I was always afraid he was going to fall and hurt himself. And a lot of times he couldn't like get himself to bed, and it could be pretty traumatic. So when Mike and I and Neil were meeting for our prep call, Mike and I started talking about how that those experiences affected the way in which we parented our own children. And I was a huge overcompensator, and I think Mike would agree that he did the same.
Yeah.
Lots of making sure that my kids were eternally happy as much as I possibly could and had all the things. Right, Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about that in your house?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I'm gonna if you just give me 1 second, I'm gonna make just a little bit of adjustment here. It amen to everything you said. I mean, I think when I had a son, I was very excited. I was like, this is, I wanted to be a dad so bad, and I thought I could do a really good job at it. And I think subconsciously I was just constantly trying to overcompensate for all the things that I struggled with, growing up. It was just a big part of how I parented. And so I just remember from the time that Tom was born, I think his mom would probably thought, why are you so invested in all this? But I was, from the get-go, I was like, we got to do the announcements, and I want them to be made a certain way, and then Tom's going to get baptized, and we're going to have a party, and we're going to do everything, up. And every birthday party, I was the birthday party planner. I was the one who did the announcements. I got the tents. I mean, it was always a big to-do. I never flew on an airplane till I was 20, and I think I was probably 10 or 11 years old before I even went to see a movie. And so, our big night out once a year was we would all go to Pizza Hut, and then sometimes Dad would drink, and he would get ugly, and so it was always a stressful thing. And so, I made sure that Tom had tons of experiences growing up. We traveled everywhere. when he wanted to do something, we went and did it. I figured out a way to do it. Sometimes went into debt. I didn't have to earn a lot when I was, starting my career, but it didn't matter to me. I was just like, we're going to do it. I wanted to make sure that the home that I built around him was very much like the homes that I grew up in, like my grandma's house and also my friends, how their homes were. And so was overspending even from an early age. I finally got that under control, but that's exactly how I raised him. And he had a wonderful childhood and got lots of culture. We traveled, different places around the world, all over the country. But it's interesting. He's 22 and he has autism, and so has several challenges. But one of the challenges is that he has no sense of what anything costs, just not a clue. And so, every time the end of the year comes, I get a very long email from him. He communicates a lot through writing. I'll get a very long email from him of a calendar of all the trips that we're supposed to plan for the following year. And I'm adding it up, and I'm like, this is thousands of dollars vacation. I don't know how we're going to do all this, son, but he just has no idea at all. He's very innocent about it, but I can always, he's not spoiled. I mean, I can tell him no, and he's fine, but it's interesting that he doesn't, he never, I mean, in some ways I guess it's good because he didn't have to experience any of those things. I made sure that there was no violence, no arguing, no raising voices, definitely no fighting. I would never have allowed him to be around any of that, but, I'm with you. Like you don't realize you're not doing it intentionally, but you do. Like you just, because you want them to have you so badly want them to have a different experience than you did.
Yeah, I mean,
it's basically. Sorry, Don. I was going to say just basically, there's nothing. Even for any parent, this is true, but I think even in your cases, there's nothing you wouldn't do for them because you didn't get that support when you were.
No, I mean, exactly. When Dad, and again, I want to say this with the caveat that in many ways he was a good dad, and we really reconciled a lot, especially in the last years. There were always, there were good things that he did for me. Well, we always had the basic necessities. He was a Cub Scout pack master. He coached my brother's baseball teams. When I had to go apply for the Truman, when I was a finalist for the Truman Scholarship, he drove me. I had a broken knee. He drove me to Michigan for the finals. He always said he loved us every time we got off the phone. The last 10 years of his life, I took care of him because he had a stroke after my mom died, and he just couldn't take care of himself. I want to say all that, but it was always a struggle because every single time that we needed money for holidays, for birthdays, for any school trips, for anything, my mom would have to fight him for it, and he would wait until the last minute, and they would have a knockdown, drag out fight over it. And and the thing is, he made good money at his job. You would have thought that he didn't, based on the way that we sort of lived, that you would have thought that we just barely made it paycheck to paycheck. But he was, I think, because of the way he grew up and because he never had money, it like some people grow up that way, and then it makes them very generous. I think in his case, it made him want to sort of control it all and keep it for himself. So, he would have the new truck, and Mom had the 15-year-old 79 Blazer that was rusted out. It was just, that was the one, one time Mom went back, she actually went to work when I was in high school. She became a home health care nurse, and she actually finally had a little bit of money, and we always had money in our pockets because she had a job. And I remember one time I was going to New York with my journalism class to get awards that I had helped win at Columbia University, and Dad wasn't going to pay for it. And so Mom used her entire paycheck that month, to send me. So, that's just the kind of person she was. And I just knew when my son was born, seeing how other people were raised and what they had, I was just like, it wasn't going to be that way for him.
Yeah,
Dawn, I interrupted you earlier, please.
I forgot what I was going to say earlier, but I do have to say that my dad is still alive. We have a great relationship. My dad actually stopped drinking when I was 15 years old. He got sober, and he's part of AA, has been for the last 40 years. And I love him tremendously. Having said all of that, those things that happened when I was a kid affected me in such a huge way. And there was no mental health services. My dad, it's not like my dad went and, got diagnosed with anything or got on any medication or anything of that nature back then. And, alcohol is a disease. It's a drug. It's, I don't blame him. I think he was doing the best under the circumstances that he was in. And, one of the things we joke about all the time that he doesn't find funny, but I do, is his memories of us growing up are completely different than my memories of us growing up, and things that he thinks were like fabulous, wonderful things that, he did for us when we were kids, like going up to some condo up in Lake Superior, Wisconsin. It were terrifying for us because he would take us out on a boat, and, he had been drinking and it was scary. And, he would rock that boat and he would laugh and he would think it was just the funniest thing in the world. My brother and I were traumatized by that.
Absolutely. Yeah. My dad,
Go ahead.
He was, well, he wasn't, it's just, you reminded me that he wasn't, he never drank and drove, but he would always make my mom drive. But we would go on these, he would say, we're going on a drive, and he was drinking. And it would be to go out and look at wildlife, or, and to go drive on country roads. And it's really funny because as an adult, I love doing that. I do wildlife photography for fun, and I've adopted that from my dad, but I've turned it into a positive experience. But it was, as soon as he said we were going on a drive, it was instant. Like you could feel the knot in your chest, because you were just terrified. And so, it's the same kind of thing. And I think people that haven't been through this don't understand how two things that seem in conflict can be true. Dad was a good man. Your dad, you love him. There were good things about him. You guys have a great relationship, and there was abuse, and and there was violence, and there were these, and there is this trauma. Like those things exist simultaneously. And I feel like if you haven't been through it, it's hard for people to understand that. But it's definitely the case. So I resonate a lot with what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I wish that people knew more. And I know that, mental health is kind of like risen in its understanding quite a bit. But I'd love for you to talk about NAMI and the work that they do there, because I want people to understand that there's so much help available, especially for young people, things that I never knew existed or never had when I was a kid. So,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I remember when I was applying for the job here, I was talking to Dan Gillison, our CEO, and I said, sometimes I wonder if I had known about NAMI, or NAMI's programs had been available, it may have changed things for our family. Because I hear from so many people who are part of NAMI programs who tell me that it saved their lives, it saved their marriage, it saved their family. But we didn't have you're right, Dawn, we didn't have those resources. And, men were told just to suck it up, right? Like you just suck it up, or you drink, or, you do all the things that people do. And that's my dad. It was exactly like your dad. I mean, that's what they did to deal with that. And you're right. Stigma the stigma around mental health has improved. I think conversations like this have helped. It's still a challenge, especially in underserved communities, communities of color. Their stigma is exponentially a bigger challenge, but it's a challenge everywhere. And we're trying to change that at NAMI. So, NAMI it's been around for 50 years, almost 50 years. We're the largest grassroots mental health advocacy nonprofit in the country. We have 650 affiliates in 48 state organizations across the country. If you go to NAMI.org, you can find out whether or not there's a local NAMI in your community. we often like to say that NAMI is the place you go while you're waiting on the world to change. And so we definitely move upstream. We're trying to address the policy issues that keep people from having access to mental health care, trying to improve mental health parity so that mental health is covered the same way as physical health in your insurance, trying to expand insurance coverage. Trying to address the systemic issues that are creating the lack of clinical mental health care providers in the country. At the same time, we all can't wait for that. And so our local NAMIs, with support from the national office, we deliver programs, peer-led programs all around the country where people can actually come together and get support from their peers, family caregiver programs for people who live with mental health conditions. There are tons of programs. In particular, as we were getting ready for this conversation, I was thinking a lot about the work we do with young people, because I know there are probably young people out there in the same sort of situation that you and I grew up with. And they may not have the help that they need, or they may feel like they can't talk about it with anyone for the reasons like I didn't want to talk about it because, and to your point, Don, like we wanted to control, we had life fixed the way that we wanted it. And so we didn't want anything to mess that up. So there are a number of things we do. If you go to NAMI.org/youth, there are tons of resources we have for students, for parents, for educators. We have a program called NAMI Trauma Insight, and that's a free online training that you can take, and that's for any person out there who works with young people, teachers, counselors, faith leaders, coaches. I really encourage you to take the online program. Again, it's free. It's designed to help you recognize trauma in young people and to respond to it in a way that will help, promote resilience for those young people. If you're like me, or I would say like you, Don, we made it really hard to see it, right? Like, so these programs are designed to help you sort of uncover that. And then I would point out, and I know I appreciate Neil how you all always promote the NAMI helpline. I just want to make a point that's there and it's available anytime for anyone who needs it. We'll try to connect you with resources and support. It's confidential. There's a component of it if you call or email or text. There's a component of it that's for teens and young adults. Specifically. So I just want to point that out. We're also building out a component that's specific to parents and caregivers. We're in the process of just building that component now. So, you call and it'll say press 1 or press 2, depending on, what sort of group you identify with. And so we're adding that component as well. But I hope people know that you're not alone in this. Especially at this time, people are really stressed right now, and there's a lot of mental health challenges out there. Our helpline this year has gotten more calls and texts than at any time in the history of the NAMI helpline, in any time in our history. Even during the heights of COVID, we did not see the level of calls that we are getting now. So that's disturbing. But I'm also glad that it's there as a resource, and I raise it because I want people to know that if you're struggling, if you're in a stressful situation, if you're having challenges like the ones we've been talking about, you are definitely not alone. It's not your fault. You don't have to be ashamed, and there's people that will help you.
I want to thank you, Mike, for sharing that. And as you were doing that, I was showing some of the resources that are available on NAMI's website, NAMI.org. Very easy to find for folks, and we'll certainly share the links in our streams. But as you were just about to start, I want to bring in this comment from Paula Kiger, another colleague of mine from Digimentors, who I know is traveling tonight and literally pulled over to the side of the road so she could listen a little bit. Because she has told me how much she appreciates NAMI's work, both locally in Tallahassee and throughout the U.S. So, and I know we've had other guests who've talked about the role that NAMI community groups and support groups have played in helping their families deal with various issues. A couple other comments that have come in. Patricia Kitchen says these detailed conversations are so very helpful, showing others that they're not alone. And Kate Easton, who's watching in Milwaukee, so eternally grateful for NAMI. They helped me understand and process issues with my son so much. I grew so much as a parent and valued their support more than I can express. Her son had was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she spoke about this last year in one of our first episodes, and that played a huge role in the work. Amy Parekh Mehta, my sister, also says thank you for all the work you're doing for NAMI. I do want to ask a specific question, Mike, knowing about there's a NAMI hotline, and we're running it on the bottom of the screen throughout this segment. Usually it's just toward the end of the show where we show it very quickly, but I want to keep it up a little bit longer for folks. But when in thinking about helplines, and I know this isn't necessarily a NAMI helpline, but one of the first things, and this is going to be a little political for folks, so I want people to be ready for it. Funding was slashed, or the helpline itself was almost eliminated. The specific hotline for LGBTQ youth. Yeah. I think it may have been the suicide hotline, the funding for that, the separate hotline. Can you talk so that raises that question, and I wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the work that NAMI is doing to support LGBTQ youth who are, more vulnerable and have so many other issues to deal with on top of just what other youth have to deal with in terms of acceptance and the reactions that their family and others might have. And I know that NAMI has a website dedicated to this, a page dedicated to this as well. But
yeah, we do.
What can you share?
Sure. So, to your point, Neil, the first thing I would point out is that we do have resources for LGBTQ individuals. We were, as NAMI was also instrumental. You're talking about the 988, the crisis hotline. Yes. That anyone can call, and I do want to plug that as well. So if you're having suicidal thoughts or you're struggling, 988 is also a resource. You mentioned that they recently cut the funding. It used to be that when you called 988, there was a special number that you could push where you could talk to people. If you were part of the LGBTQ plus community, you could talk to other like-minded people. That they cut that. What our policy team has said, and our point of view on all of this is, first of all, we hope that people will still avail themselves of 988 if they need it. Having said that, we are very upset and frankly angry and disappointed that those services were cut. They undoubtedly save lives, and I know that people have told us, if you're part of that community, you want to be able to reach out to people who get it. So what I would say to folks who identify as LGBTQ plus is that you're not alone. You're valued, and NAMI's here to help you through our programs. Neil, you're mentioning you're showing on the screen the page of our resources, the number of resources available. You can always call our hotline, our helpline. We're there to help you. Our point of view is that good mental health is something that everyone deserves. It doesn't discriminate, but to your point, there are certain people out there, certain communities where it's a bigger challenge because they have multiple challenges, right? And they're unique. And so we've got to meet people where they are. And we've got to make sure that we're providing the services and supports based on people's unique needs, because the needs and the challenges aren't the same for everyone. Across our country, there are unique groups. The LGBTQ plus communities is one of those, and we've got to make sure that as we move forward, that we're remembering that one size doesn't fit all. That's our point of view. We're going to continue to advocate. We hope that we can get that funding back. We're going to continue to fight for it. We're going to continue to do what we can. I also, as part of our outreach, we're also encouraging people in the community to reach out to the Trevor Project, because they do have a helpline where they have resources, mental health resources that are specific. They're a good friend of ours, and they have very specific. On top of the resources, we have very specific resources and support for people in the community, and so we encourage people to reach out to them as well.
And I'm showing on the screen, and there's actually a better page that I'm going to put up for folks. In addition to LGBTQ youth, you raised that issue of people who have a specific background or identify in a certain way, sometimes need extra support or different support, and that NAMI has it recognizes that with outreach to the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, Black, African Americans, Hispanic, Latinx, Indigenous. We talked about LGBTQ plus and people with disabilities. So there is that understanding of that dimension. I know that from my own perspective and understanding, as someone who is from I was born here, but my parents are from India, South Asian background. That's something that mental health is very much not talked about, not discussed. That the stigma is even bigger, not just for South Asians, but as you mentioned earlier, for men in particular. It's a huge challenge. So anything you can do to make it easier for folks to get the help they need, to reach out, is certainly appreciated.
So
yeah,
Neil,
want to go ahead, Dawn?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject something, because your mom had made a comment earlier about like that you can feel guilty about talking about your like how you grew up, and that it brings up a lot of feelings, like you shouldn't be talking about it, right? Because it's like our very personal home lives that we sheltered and didn't talk to about with anybody, and here we are on this show saying all these words and minorly apologizing for it by saying, well, our parents were really good people. I really appreciate, Mike, you saying that two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
And the reason that we share these things is not to embarrass or shame our parents at all, because they did the best that they could with what they had, but really just to bring to light that all these feelings are real. And yes, your mom is absolutely right. It can make you feel very guilty. And I think for me, I don't know about you, Mike, but for me, I really have to push past that. And I want people to understand that those feelings are very valid and real.
Yeah.
But I push past it because I think it's just so important to understand the reality of two things being true at the same time.
Yeah, and it's almost like the elephant in the room, and I really appreciate you putting a point on it. I was well into my 30s before I could even say, literally, before the words ever came out of my mouth, my dad was abusive, or I couldn't say those words.
Sure.
It took therapy and years of work to be able to even talk about any of this, to get past the point where I was personally embarrassed, like it was somehow, even though I intellectually knew it wasn't my fault, there was so much shame attached to it that you just didn't want to. I had gotten so good at not talking about it that talking about it was really hard. Two things can be true at the same time. My dad was a hard worker. I was very proud. I mean, people can say they worked in the same industry for 50 years and rose from what he rose from to the heights of his career. He was a veteran. He served our country honorably in the Army. I mentioned all the other things that he did. He loved us. And later in his life, toward the end, I remember I was having a conversation and we got on the subject of his dad, who I mentioned walked out on him. And he said, I always felt like I made sure you all had what you needed, and I was with your mom, and I never left, and I felt like I did back better than my dad. And I said, Dad, you did much better than your dad. And I told him he should feel proud about that, and I was always proud of that. That in spite of all of his struggles, that he was there for us, and Mom was too. Mom had every reason in the world to walk out, but we had food on the table every single day. Whether there was fights, physical abuse, her own mental health struggles, there was food on the table every day. She made sure we had everything we needed, even if it took her own money. She was the fiercest protector and defender of us. I mentioned she always said she was proud of all of us. People would be lucky to have a mom that cared about their kids the way that she did. She was cool. She was I mentioned she was a rock and roll mom. She was a free spirit. I didn't always appreciate it when I was younger. I wish I had now, but she was an awesome person, and the world's a dimmer place because she's not in it.
Absolutely, Mike. I want to bring in a few comments. We're coming to the close of this show. We'll take just a few moments. I want to share Rose Horowitz is watching from Connecticut, and she says it's good to be learning more about NAMI. Tuning in from Connecticut, NAMI is a great resource. I'm curious if NAMI has resources in communities to go into public middle schools and high schools so kids are aware of hotlines and groups to seek help for mental health problems. I can actually answer some of that, Rose. I was at an orientation today for my daughter, Emily, who's going into middle school, and the student government has a mental health committee. It's not actually a full club, but they have a mental health initiative there, and they were sharing the NAMI mental health hotline for youth. And they said that they organize various activities throughout the year where they hand out literature and encourage people to reach out if they need the help. Mike, I'm sure you could speak a little bit more eloquently than I did on that, but at least I know from firsthand experience just earlier this morning in Fairfax County, Virginia.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
No, thanks for the question, Rose. It's always, I'll say this with the caveat that it is always very challenging to break into public school curriculum because they're so set. But having said that, we are working on that. There's a number of things that actually we have available. One is called the Creative Mindsets Toolkit. I mean, all of this is on the youth section of the website, but it uses creative activities to help middle school and high school students sort of explore their emotions and develop coping strategies and support other peers. So we have those tools. They're being piloted right now. Hopefully we'll be expanding them, and we're also planning to translate those into Spanish. We are developing a Mindful Me series, and it's for K through 8, and it's going to offer age-tailored activities that help kids sort of work on identifying their emotions, building resilience, strengthening their self-awareness, developing coping skills, all the things that young people struggle with. And so we have that as well. And then we also have NAMI on campus. So these are clubs, I mean, to your point, Neil, these are clubs that are run by high school and college students in partnership with local NAMI state organizations and affiliates. And those NAMI on campus groups promote education, they do advocacy, they promote help seeking, they form support groups for young people. So yeah, we're more and more realizing that good mental health needs to start at a young age, and we're doing what we can to make sure that we're reaching people and meeting them where they are in their needs. Last thing I'll say about this is that we actually have a couple of books, NAMI published books. One written by our chief medical officer, Dr. Ken Duckworth. The other one is written by our associate medical director, Dr. Christine Crawford. Both of them are psychiatric experts. Christine is focused on working with young people. the first book is called, I mean, you can find these on NAMI's website. They're also on Amazon. The first one's called You Are Not Alone. It's a guide for navigating mental health, and it's literally stories of people who've lived through mental health challenges. So it's a really fantastic book. The other one that Christine wrote, Dr. Crawford, is You Are Not Alone for Parents and Caregivers. It's a guide specifically for parents and caregivers who are working with young people or trying to support young people. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those as well.
There's the You Are Not Alone series for parents and caregivers. That's one of the ones from Dr. Christine Crawford.
Yeah, yeah. She was actually Dr. Crawford was just on the Today Show. You can Google this as well. She was just on the Today Show last week with Jenna talking about these issues.
And what was the other book you mentioned?
It is called. It's probably there on the page if you scroll down. It's called. It's You Are Not Alone. Yeah, the NAMI Guide to Navigating Mental Health. There are a series that go together. So this one was written by Dr. Ken Duckworth, who's our Chief Medical Officer.
Great. Thank you for pointing those out. I really appreciate that. As we close out, a couple of comments that came in. Amy Parak Mehta, again, in full disclosure, my sister, does say, thank you to Neil and Dawn for providing this venue for people to address and confront these issues. Amy, thank you for your support. It actually does mean a lot when family and close friends, watch these shows, share the content, and help break down that stigma. It really is. It makes a big difference. We're not going to go this far past the hour, but my mom did suggest we needed 2 episodes to cover all the content and all the great work that you're doing with NAMI. We didn't go quite that long, but Rose also, got this quote from you. We are more and more realizing that mental health starts at a young age, and she agrees wholeheartedly. I want to let folks know about our next episode, which is going to be, we are live the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month. And so our next episode is going to be August 28th. It's going to be a great follow-up to this conversation. Episode 35, Karissa Gretebeck. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Dawn. Gretebeck. Self-care while parenting a child with special needs. Mike talked about earlier some of the challenges, some of the issues with parenting after surviving trauma, but also his son has autism, and that certainly is a factor. Karissa will talk about her experience dealing with her own mental health self-care while parenting a child with special needs. And that's certainly going to be a very interesting discussion. The 4th Thursday of this month, August 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you joined us late, I just want to make sure that if you want to go back and watch from the beginning, as soon as we're done, the show will be ready to watch on the same links that you're watching on now, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on my website. From the very beginning, you'll be able to watch anything that you missed. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, Mike in particular. A couple of quick last goodbyes. Jonathan says provocative topic and interesting program. And Chitachi Egwu says good evening all. So if she joined us late, Chitachi, go back and watch the beginning, particularly hearing about Mike's story and his personal experiences growing up. I think could be really illuminating. With that, any last words, Mike, before we call it a show?
Well, I just thank you all for having me, and Dawn, it was especially great just connecting with you on this. It's both unfortunate and also in a weird way good to know that there's other people who've been through similar experiences, and so it was just great chatting with you about it. And just a reminder, I said, to everyone out there, you're not alone. And it's really true.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike. It's been an absolutely fabulous show, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight.
Absolutely. I will share a comment we were not able to get to earlier, but I would be remiss if we didn't put it up. When you were talking about your son, Mike, and the work that you do, kind of the focus that you've had on him, Kathy had a comment, and I'm going to pull it right up, talking about you as a wonderful father and that she's so proud of you. And I want to just highlight that with the experience that you had growing up. There are examples of people who've gone through that kind of experience and turned out to be great fathers, and you are certainly one of them. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for the work that you're doing at NAMI, and appreciate all of the support you've given to the show in terms of sharing it on your channels and with your colleagues. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And, that's the best compliment you get. So,
absolutely. Thank you. And we'll see everyone August 28th. Bye-bye.